Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Reserve Survival Town Hall. I'm Julie Hedrick. I'm the APFA National President, and before we get started, we're going to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves that will be answering the questions today.
Hi, my name is Renee Mayer. I'm the APFA JCBA Specialist. I work together with the Contract and Scheduling Chairs, specifically on scheduling system tools such as TTS, UBL, ETB, Rota-D.
Hi, I'm Marty McMillan. I'm the APFA National Scheduling Chair.
And I'm Jeff Peterson. I'm the APFA National Contract Chair.
Hi, I'm Larry Salas, APFA National Vice President.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Black, APFA National Secretary. Glad to have you today.
And we also have Wendy Oswald. She's one of our APFA negotiators who will be answering questions on the live chat, as well as Joe Trudell, who will also is one of our scheduling reps. And they'll both be answering questions if you send a question in now through our live chat on this. Well, this topic is a topic I know near, excuse me, one second.
There we go. You're good.
All right, this topic is one that I can tell you everyone in this room is very concerned about, and daily we are evaluating and analyzing what's going on with our reserves, as well as your base presidents at every base. I can tell you every month when the staffing information comes out and we see what the reserve percentages are, your base presidents and your national are not happy to see the reserve percentages as high as they are. We are collecting our own data because we have been asking for data from the company that some of it we have not received, and we're collecting our own data to see exactly why they need such high reserve percentages at many of our bases. We know that a lot of bases have been affected this last year by displacements, Miami, LA, Charlotte, and Phoenix, and that's really also helped cause part of the seniority issue at the reserve as far as what reserve is going to at your base. We do not agree with the way that crew scheduling and crew tracking have been utilizing our reserves. And I will tell you, we are not just sitting here not doing anything about it. Your base presidents also are not. They are all working on and sending Marty and Jeff and our scheduling reps daily what's happening, and they're questioning why they're utilizing the reserves the way they are. So today primarily is a day to help you get through the reserve month, to understand the systems, to understand Rota-D, LMCO that we just implemented, how to bid for a reserve. We know that it is a topic that many have lots of suggestions about what we should do with in negotiations, and we will definitely have a town hall for you to be able to talk to us and for us to hear more about what you would like us to do in the next negotiations with the reserve section. I know the negotiating team went out back in 2019 and did a listening tour, and they heard a lot then regarding the reserve system, and we will also be doing that again with this negotiating team. So I don't want to take up too much more of the day with getting on about that because we have a lot of questions, and we want to make sure all your questions are answered. And if we are not able to answer every single question today, we'll make sure that we use these questions for some hotlines to go out and Q&As for those of you who are on reserve. So let's get started here. First off, I think we wanted to walk through where you can find information, answers to your questions on both JetNet and also on the APFA website. So let's go to JetNet first and look there where we can, if you're on reserve this month, where you can find some answers and some guides. Actually, there's some good guides and some videos. So Josh is going to go to JetNet.
So from FA Portal, if you click on links, there's some really helpful information in crew change.
And a lot of this information is information from FOI when Rota D was implemented, and then there is actually some new information there also. Here's manuals on Rota and on reserve bidding, the LRD tool, and the new LMCO. There are also a few videos there, understanding groupings and clicks. Okay, let's go over to the APFA website. And after you've signed in, you can go to departments. And then we're going to go down to JCBA. And then here under reserve bidding, you have a few guides here also. The Rota D are troubleshooting guides that are recent. Those were done this year by Renee and Jeff and Marty. And then there is some other information on there. Some of those are from around FOI timeframe. So I just wanted to make sure we pointed out those resources that you do have. You also, I know Marty, I think you were going to talk about the hours. Go ahead and.
Okay, so we have more coverage on our contract scheduling desk with reps and live chat available than we've ever had before. We've been very fortunate to be able to work remotely, which has afforded us the opportunity to offer a live rep, a live person, Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. by calling the APFA switchboard, and that number is 817-540-0108. And as soon as you hear someone talking, you can just immediately press 1, and that will connect you with a live rep between 7 and 7, Monday through Friday. And then we have live chat that's available holidays, weekends, and after hours. So we have a live chat rep. If you don't want to speak to somebody, you can wait till 3 p.m. on Monday through Friday, and live chat rep will be able to assist you from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. and then 9 to 5 on holidays and weekends. And those you can access through the APFA website. You can access it through the Facebook page, the contract scheduling Facebook page for APFA. There's all kinds of avenues that you can access the live reps through.
So from the APFA website, this orange button is how you utilize live chat. And use web chat, and then you can start a conversation.
And that's 7 to 7 Central Time.
Central Time. All times that I gave were Central Time, correct.
Okay, great. All right. Well, let's get started on some of our questions here today since we have so many. First off, let's go to Crew Portal, and so that we can discuss how you bid aggressive for a trip. And I believe Jeff is going to walk us through this.
Yes, yeah, we had several questions that came in regarding aggressive bidding for trips. So you would go to daily bids, click on reserves, and that takes you to this page here. And if you wanted to add a new bid, you would click on the date. Let's assume that we're bidding for tomorrow, Wednesday, June 30th, and we'll click on add new bid. And you can, just like you do in Rota for your daily or for your future bidding, so that you do your future bidding, and if you wanted to place an aggressive bid, that would be in that second column there. You can, select the date, you give it a description. If, let's say, for example, I want to bid aggressively for all IPD trips, because I like my international flying, so I would say aggressive IPD. Then I'm going to say generically, because at this point I'm willing to take any IPD sequence generically, and then I can add the pairing type, domestic, so I can specifically select IPD there. And then if I wanted to add any more criteria as far as if there were specific overnights that I wanted, or report times, all the different categories for sorting or searching for trips are there. Let's say I wanted to make sure that I got some of the, I like working later in the day, so I don't want to do the early trips, even the early IPD trips, for example. So I could say I want to sign in after 7 p.m. to try and capture any of the later IPD trips. And so if I'm satisfied with my criteria there, I would select Save Bid, and that would be my aggressive IPD bid right there. You see up above that the aggressive bids that show our those are the waivers. So if I wanted to get that IPD trip based on a waiver, I would need to make sure I've selected any of those waivers. So we have, for example, I came in the morning from a trip and I wanted to waive my home-based rest and go out that night. I could do that using that waiver. Or if I wanted to be awarded into a flex day or a golden day. So I'm willing to take an IPD trip into a flex day or golden day, so I can also select award into a flex day golden day. One thing that's and so that's the daily aggressive bids, and then we also have the standing future bids, or standing aggressive bids down farther. Also, you would need to put in your waivers, but the one caution for standing aggressive bids is you just need to make sure that you know that it's standing, and so it's there at any point. If you've said, for example, I'm willing to work until flex day golden day, and I put that in last week and I forget, the system could actually award me something this week based on the standing aggressive bid that I have in there. So you want to be cognizant of the fact that you are, it's a standing aggressive bid. You're raising your hand saying, I want to go out.
So if it's your day off,
and if it's my day off,
you can get a trip.
You can get a trip, yep. If you've got your same.
Put in a standing aggressive bid, you said award into flex day golden day, you could then you could get a trip. That could be good if you wanted a trip, but if you forget, then that might not be so good.
Yes.
Can we go over a couple of the rules with aggressive?
Yeah.
Right, the 40 hours. Let's talk about that.
The aggressive, so as far as the calling out of time, you can only go aggressive up to, only your first 40 hours will count towards calling out of time. So that's, no matter how you acquired that time, after 40 hours, aggressive bids are not going to count towards your calling out of time.
So Jeff, I like to fly a lot of hours, right? Let's say can I just keep going aggressive the whole month?
You can.
Yeah.
But
I don't care about calling out.
If you don't care about calling out of time, I have a friend in LA who, he flies aggressive all month long, and he's managed to get up to about 105 hours, I think, last month by flying aggressive. He was not concerned about, calling out of time. So yeah, if you like to.
Giving you trips.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else about aggressive that we should? We talked about if you want to work on your days off as a reserve, and you can't find anything in ETB, can't get a trip in ETB, and you bid in future in Rhoda, you didn't get a trip, then you can also put in an aggressive Rhoda D bid, right? And award into flex day, golden day, and then you could also get a trip on your days off.
Yes.
Aggressive.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and carryovers. Also, if you wanted to bid aggressive at the end of the month, and going into your line holder month, for example, you would still need to use the award into flex day, golden day, even though they're technically not flex days and golden days because you're a line holder, but that you still would need to select that waiver in order to be awarded into the next month, your line holder month. Okay,
great. All right, let's stay here on Crew Portal because it looks like our next set of questions are about bidding. And it says, what is the real way to bid days off in the reserve tab? So let's go to PBS and pull that up.
So that's actually a very good question. We get questions all the time about making sure people are bidding correctly. So if you're bidding for reserve, that calendar that you see there on the left is on your dashboard. That's actually the calendar that you would use to bid your line holder days off. So if you wanted to make sure that you're bidding in reserve, you go to the reserve tab there along the navigational bar.
Not this one.
Not that days off.
Not days off.
Not days off, but your reserve tab. And this is the only tab that would count for your days off for reserve. So that's the only place you should be.
And then you bid on the calendar.
And then you bid on this calendar.
Right.
And a good indication that you're bidding on the right calendar is you're going to see those little numbers in the bottom right corner. That's how many reserves that crew manning anticipates that they'll be needing on that particular day. So that's always a good clue that you're bidding on the right calendar. You're going to see those little numbers in black. So for July, I opted to use a strategy. There's been questions on what's a good strategy for bidding days off in PBS. Can you bid all days off in a single layer? Do you want to bid only 1 or 2 or 3 at a time? There's really no right or wrong answer for bidding days off in PBS. It's really what works for you and what your seniority can hold. So anything that you put in a single layer is going to be considered of equal weight. So if I put all my 12 days off in layer 1, and I can hold different I can't hold all 12 days off, but I can hold different combinations of them. The system at that point would then be choosing between the different options. So I like the way I bid for July. I'm on reserve in July, and I wanted to make sure I had the end of the month off. And I put a single day off in layer 1, and actually successfully held it off to my surprise. And then I went layer by layer, adding 1 to 2 days off until I got to my full 12 by layer 7, and added some backups in layer 7. So you can put, and I know friends who have tried other strategies. I have a friend in Charlotte who she wanted to see if she could actually hold all 12 days off in one layer. She was senior enough. She put all 12 days off in layer 1 and held them. So
what's really important if you're going to do that, though? If you're going to put all 12 in what do you need to make sure?
That it's a legal pattern. Most importantly, a legal pattern. And so a legal pattern as far as the days on and off is, no less than 2 days on, no less than 2 days off in a row, and no more than 8 days off in a row. And then the legal patterns of 3 to 6 days on.
Right. So let's just say I'm not the number 1 reserve in the base, right? I'm the number 100. Number 100 in the base. And I've got, let's just use your calendar here for an example. I have a wedding to go to on the 10th, right? And I really need to have that off. So the system that we have allowing them to bid in 7 layers I would bid the 10th for sure off in my first layer.
And if that's my most important date, I would bid that day off by itself. Because if, let's say I put I want to have the 10th and the 11th off. But the 10th is actually when the wedding is, so I need to make sure that I'm on that day, I'm off that day. Because if I put the 10th and the 11th, and for some reason I can hold one of them, what's the scenario where I could only hold one of them?
Well, you could hold 9, 10, or 10, 11, because you have to hold 2 days off together at least. Yes, right?
And so I would just want to make sure I'm steering it towards the exact day off that I want.
Right. So the majority of our reserves, would you say, do not bid 12 days off in their first layer? The majority of our reserves go through each layer, and depending upon what they have going on in the month, and bid that way.
Yes.
Or some probably try and get all weekends off.
Yes.
Right, or Friday, Saturdays, or Sunday, Mondays, and might do that, But if they've got a couple of days that are really important for them to have off, they should make sure those are in their top layer, not with a lot of other days.
Not with a lot of other days.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about with reserve bidding? Let's go back just one more time, because I know I have seen this numerous times. I'm sure you guys have seen it more than I have. You have to make sure you go to reserve on the dashboard up there on the top, and click on reserve, and then the calendar on the left will appear for the reserve bidding off, days off. Right?
I think there was one other thing we wanted to show CO.
Yeah. But wait 1 minute, okay, we can do that, sure. Let's go to LMCO now. Because we have quite a few questions about LMCO, so let me go down there and see, let's make sure we cover them. Okay. Jeff, why don't you give us an overview first of LMCO, and then I'll ask some of the questions, see if answer the questions.
So LMCO is, by its formal name, less than minimum call out. That's a waiver that you're selecting. It's a new, it was implemented on June 21st. It's a piece of the contract that was just recently implemented. This allows you to tell the system that you're willing to report to departure at less than minimum call out. So if you're at a co-terminal base, that would be 3 hours, or if you're at a base that's not co-terminal, that's 2 hours. So you're saying, I'm willing to report to show up for departure at less than the 2 or 3 hour call out. So it's a waiver, so you'd want to select that waiver there, what that Josh is doing. And so currently I'm based in New York, so let's say I live in Manhattan and I don't really want to go to Newark, so I'm only gonna volunteer to go to LaGuardia because I live closer to LaGuardia. So I select the co-terminal that I would like to report to. And then I'm gonna say that I don't need the full 3 hours to get to the airport. I'm close enough that I can get there in an hour and 45 minutes. So I'm letting the system know that I'm willing to show up and reduce my minimum call out to an hour 45. So I'll click add, and then I can also select, so I don't want to go to Newark, but I am willing to go to JFK as well. And JFK is a little bit farther away from me, so I'm going to make sure that I have 2 hours and 15 minutes for departure, so I'm going to add that. And that's the extent of my LMCO willingness to volunteer, so I'm going to click confirm there. And it's going to ask me, are you sure? Because it want to make the system, we want to make sure that you are sure of what you're doing. So we've made sure that they added a layer so that when you're confirming this, you're clicking yes, you're sure.
Okay, and so Jeff, now, you've done that, but what trips are you going to get?
Well, I can either bid generic sequences or I can bid specific sequences and let them know that I'm willing to fly generic specific, or aggressive generic specific.
Because it's an aggressive
bid? It is an aggressive bid, yes.
Right, because the language in the contract today, it allows for less than minimum call out for aggressive bids only. That's our language today. So something maybe we'll look at for the future of something different, depending on how this works for our flight attendants, of course, if it works for them. So if I put in less than minimum call out and I have an aggressive bid in, right, and I only want IPD trips, I don't want less than minimum call out for a domestic turnaround, right?
Right.
Can they call me and give me a domestic turnaround with less than minimum call out?
No.
No. So
the system is only going to read your aggressive bids and award you based on your bid.
Right. So, but they can call me and give me more than 3 hours call out for that domestic turn that I really don't want.
Yes,
right?
unfortunately, by using the LMCO waiver, I'm not getting out of being assigned something I don't want.
Yeah, but it can help you to possibly get that IPD trip, right? Okay, and I know if you're, I think Renee, maybe you can help us with this. So for a flight attendant who maybe wanted an IPD trip and Jeff got it instead, can they see that on the reserve report?
Yes, when the daily call-out list is completed, it's going to show you how they were awarded this trip with the the ROTD results list. It's going to show you if it was awarded under a certain contract reference or if it was awarded under LMCO. That would indicate that the award came from a less than minimum call-out reserve aggressive bid.
Okay, great. Okay, it looks like we have another question here, Jeff. It says, when the LMCO communication was announced, it said we can sit our wrap at their airport. How would that work if we have 3? Are we allowed to preference 1? And if so, how long do we have to report for that trip?
Well, yes, you can, just like I showed you earlier, as Josh and I showed you earlier, you can designate which airports, which co-terminals you would like to receive the less than minimum call out. So in the scenario that we just walked you through, if I were at, let's say I was sitting my wrap at LaGuardia, I still could get to Kennedy in less than 3 hours to JFK. So I would say, I could select LaGuardia and say I'm at the airport, and there literally is, if you want to go back, Josh, and show them that there is literally that you can show them that you're at the airport. There we go.
There we go.
So I'm at LaGuardia. I'm comfortable on a couch. I can actually let the system know that I'm at the airport, and they will know that I don't need, that I'm there and I'm ready to run straight to the gate. But if I haven't selected JFK or Newark, in this case, I can say, okay, I know I can get from LaGuardia to JFK. I can jump in a taxi and be there in, say, an hour and 15 minutes in this scenario. So then I could also select JFK for less than minimum call out. But if I don't select Newark, for example, the system is not going to award me anything at Newark at less than minimum call out.
Okay. All right. So this could really work for somebody who's a commuter.
Yeah.
Is at the airport.
Yeah.
Or someone who lives close by, right?
Yeah.
It
Okay.
only applies to what you're bidding for.
Yes.
Yes, only applies to
Here.
an aggressive bid.
So in this scenario, right now, if I were bidding aggressive IPD, it's only going to look to award me an IPD sequence at less than minimum call out.
Okay. All right, we have one more question about minimum call-out here. It says, if I say I will waive to an hour call-out, is there any penalty if I end up not making it to the gate within an hour after positive contact with crew scheduling?
That is a good question. Once there has been positive contact made with crew scheduling, that is my trip. If I put in for an IPD trip, they run minimum call out, they call me, I say, hey, I'm going to be there. Yes, and that's my trip, and I would receive a missed trip if I didn't make it.
And I'm sorry, I just want to make sure we cover all these. They're already getting mad at me because I'm asking. Okay, let's just say I don't pick up the phone, you know, because I was in the shower or something, and they call me for that trip. Do I need to call them back?
I mean, if you want to fly, you need to call them back. Yes, they're not going to sit around and wait for you. If Marty is also I'm senior to Marty. Sorry, Marty. I put in for LMCO for IPD trips. She also put in for it. I'm in the shower. I don't pick up the phone. They leave me a message. I can call them back, but if they've already moved on to Marty and Marty's picked up and said, I'll take the trip, then they're going to move on to Marty, and it's, so there's no penalty.
And when you call back, you're going to say, I still want a trip.
Yeah. And
so keep me on the list.
Keep me on the list, yeah.
Right, but I was in the shower.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's covered most of LMCO. I'm trying to think if there's any, because I think this is so new. I want to make sure, and we don't have a lot of questions on it, so we probably haven't had a lot of people trying it out yet.
Right. There was one question that had asked if it was operated like they used to do at LAA, where you could just say, hey, I'm at this terminal. This is a computer-run program. It's not something picked up manually by crew scheduling. So it is not quite that way. If it's running through the LMCO programming, it will collect you from that. However, normal Rota D processing is going to run, and you could be assigned through that normal Rota D processing and be required to be at any one of the co-terminals within 3 hours.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Renee. Okay, I'm going to go back to bidding because we kind of went on to LMCO, and it looks like we've got a question here. It says, why is there not an alert when you do not bid? I recently bid reserve and forgot to bid under the reserve tab in the system, so I basically did not bid and ended up with nothing. I need it off in July. Oh, I know that's why that was so important. We got to walk everybody through that because this is not what we want to happen. If there had been an alert of some kind telling me that I didn't have a bidding system, I could have corrected my error.
That's a good question, an alert for that. I mean,
That's a programming change.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things on a backlog that is our list of issues that we would like to see in all the systems, PBS being one of the biggest. And alerts and, like the little pop-ups are something that we really need a pop-up that would come up and say, hey, if you're on reserve, don't bid in this, section. But go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, the PBS, APFA PBS team has been discussing this with the PBS admins just recently, because with more and more people on reserve, we've been seeing it happen more and more often. But keep in mind, you can bid as a reserve or a line holder. So if you're bidding days off in the days off tab, PBS doesn't know that you're not, that you're going to be a reserve hands down at that point, and that's why you're bidding. It doesn't know you're not bidding there as a backup. So, but we are working on some sort of a notification to say that you are bidding as a line holder.
Yeah. And that's a good point, though. You should, when should you bid 7 layers of reserve and 7 layers of line holder?
Well, certainly any time that you have bid to in your LRD that you preferred line holder, but you were given reserve, because you could be moved up to line holder at that point. Also, if you are one of the most junior, you could be forced off to reserve and onto a line holder. So whenever you're in those categories, you should bid for both, in 7 layers in both.
And I know we haven't talked about that in a while, but I know there's one more layer, tentative, right?
Tentative.
If you were tentative and you ended up being a reserve that month, you could also get moved up to line holder during PBS bidding. So those 3 categories are really the most important to make sure that you do bid 7 layers of each reserve and line holder. Okay, it looks like we have another question here on bidding. It says, I have 7 days of vacation plus 4 VEX days in September and October. My reserve rotation will land on one of those months. Should I bid reserve in August? My last reserve month was May, and I have heard having 7 days in a reserve month is not a good idea. When would I lose my VEX days? Okay, there's a lot of questions in this one. So first off, let's see here, Jeff, if you have 7 days of vacation in your reserve month and 4 VEX days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get, if you've got 7 days vacation, you get 9 more days off, so you'd have 16 days off total, right?
Yeah.
In that reserve month. So you might want to have your vacation in a reserve month, right?
You might want to, but I think what she's getting at is that some people don't like the idea of not getting their full 12 days off plus their vacation. So at 7 days is when you start to, when the system prorates your days off.
Right. Do we want to go to that chart and show that proration chart? I think that varies from person to person, right? Because if I was on reserve, I might want those 16 days off, because that means I've got 14 days on instead of 18, right?
Right.
Less days the company can call me.
It's personal preference, right?
And, for people who are high-time flyers on reserve, having vacation days on your reserve months gives you more time to pick up on the ETB and, make extra money.
Right. She doesn't lose her VEX days, though.
She would not lose her VEX days as long as there's a legal pattern that can be made. So those VEX days, though, are your days off. So if you have 9 days off and you have 4 VEX days, you're bidding for an additional 5 days on top of those 4 VEX days.
So where can we find, this is the proration chart, right, for, especially if you're on vacation, right, and it's a 30-day month, and let's just say you've got 7 days of vacation, so that would mean that you're on 23 days a month, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where we came up with the 9 days off.
Yes.
3 of those would be flex, and 6 of them would be golden days. So,
if you have VEX days, then of those 6 golden days, 4 of those are your VEX.
Yeah. Right. Let's see, she had a couple more questions here. Let me make sure. She would not lose her VEX, okay. And then she says, I have 4 days in August. Okay. Now
the question was, should I bid down to reserve in August?
And she's got 4 days.
If you have 4 days of reserve, if you have more than 3 days of vacation and you bid down to reserve, to senior bump, it would not count as your reserve rotation. So I would not, in this scenario, I would not recommend her bidding down to reserve in August if she wants that to satisfy her rotation.
Right. So if you've got 3 days of vacation, you can bid on to reserve, and it counts.
Yeah.
And then you get your 3 days of vacation plus your 12 days off, so you'd have 15 days off in the month.
Yep.
If you have 4 days, that would not be a recommendation at all, because you'd still have to sit reserve.
In September.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I think we've covered that. Okay, let's see here. All right, so this is a question on calling out of time. And Marty, it looks like you're going to help us out with this one. It says, if I'm available on the last day of the contractual month, can I call out of time for the last day? I have 5 days off and the last day on. I'm over 87 hours. What can I do?
So if you have 8501 in your reserve calling out of time, your RSVCOT on your HI1, it's up in the header. But if you have 8501 or more, you can call out of time and let them know you're ready to go, you're done for the month, and they will mark you as unavailable for the rest of the month. And Josh is showing you where to find that on there. It's right underneath your phone number, so it's real easy to find, your RSVCRT, reserve calling out of time. Now, one caveat to that is going forward to July, we are in a flex month. So if your base was flex, and like Charlotte is where I'm based, so my base was flexed by 1 hour, so that means my reserve calling out of time is now 8601. If you're Chicago based, you were flexed 3 hours, so you're calling out of time at 8801. So it will adjust according to what the flex was for your base.
Okay, and do you want to call out of time always if you're over, or do you just let it ride and hope?
You can let it ride. They're only going to assign you, though, to 90 unless you want to go aggressive. So, you know, make sure you know what you're doing. If you want to go out, call out of time, call out of time. If you don't, you can, you know, just hang out. I prefer to call out of time. I think most people would prefer to call out of time because that way your time is your time. And if you want to pick up ETB over those days off, you can do that. And that's going to go above your guarantee. So there's definitely a benefit to that. You cannot, this is a question we get a lot on the desk, when people call out of time, no, you cannot still go to TTS or UDL.
Yeah.
You are limited to going to ETB, even though you have called out of time.
And let's just say, because this comes from a different contract a long time ago, but a lot of people haven't been on reserve in a long time.
Right.
So when you call out of time, they have to release you from the rest of their days. There is no longer they can keep you on call the last day of the month.
Oh, okay.
Right? That's but that doesn't apply anymore because let's say you're at 8501, they can't give you something that goes into the next month that's worth 2 hours, right? Call out of time.
Yeah. When you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about the contract now.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks, Marty. Okay, next question. If you fly your trip into your flex day or golden day, does it go towards your company guarantee and hours, or is it considered extra time and just added to your set guarantee? Sorry. Renee, I think you're going to help us answer that one.
So at first I want to express, you cannot be assigned into a golden day. You can be awarded, but if you're assigned a trip into your flex day or awarded into your golden day, those hours are going to be pay and credit.
All right. Let's see if we've got more, because I know I'm going to ask you another question on this. Sorry. Okay. If I go into my flex day in actual operations, can you explain the pay for that?
Right. Actual operations is quite different. In actual operations, if your all time is pay, no credit. So it all goes above your guarantee, whether it's a flex day or a golden day. If it's more than an hour into your flex day or golden day, you have the option of having that day off restored at a mutually agreed upon day. Or you have the option, you can actually take the daily rate paid above guarantee in addition to all of the flight time. You must let crew scheduling know what your choice is within 48 hours following the return of that sequence.
Okay, so if I went over, in actual operations, I have 4 hours that went into my flex day. I would get the 4 hours of pay above guarantee,
Correct.
right? I would get another day off
Correct.
on reserve, and that's a golden day,
Yeah.
right? And then if I didn't want that other day off, a different day off, then I could get my 356 or 410 plus my 4 hours.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
One thing I wanted to add to that too, that we've seen happen a lot here recently is a flight attendant gets flown into their flex day and they call to get the day off restored, and scheduling has told them the coverage is bad because it's like they maybe only have 3 days where they can get that day off restored. The coverage is bad, we can't give it to you then. That's not an option for them. So you need to let one of the reps know, call them, email Jeff, me, or Renee, and let us know immediately, and we'll get that fixed for you, because that's not their option.
And you can also tell them, crew schedules, that is not an option.
Correct.
In our contract.
Correct.
So
Not a contract.
you have every right to say that to them. Okay, let's talk about if can they actually assign me into a flex day, right? Let's say it's towards the end of the month, and there's nowhere else for me to have a day off.
Then they cannot do that either.
Okay, so if they assign me into my flex day, and I've got all days off after that, then I call back and I tell them, you have to take me off that trip because there is nowhere else for that flex day to go.
That's correct.
Okay,
You must have a place to restore
All right.
that day off.
all right. We want to make sure that's clear because we know that that has been attempted a few times, huh? Just a few. All right. Okay. How do I trade a golden day, and how do I find someone to trade it with? Renee?
All right, on the ETB page, there is a tab to trade your reserve days, and that is where you would go to find somebody, or you can post it publicly or privately to try to trade these days. If it's coming up real close, time sensitive, and you really need to get this done, you can also call crew scheduling for assistance. They wouldn't be trading it with another flight attendant. They would be trading it based on their staffing needs on a given day.
Right. Okay. And that's just to call the crew schedule.
Yes.
All right.
Right.
Okay. All right. This is a minimum call out. If I have wrap B, C, or D, can they give me an assignment that signs in less than 3 hours from the start of my wrap, since I am supposed to check my schedule at the beginning of the wrap? Jeff.
That's a,
Sorry.
That's a good question. No, they can't contact you outside of your wrap. So once your wrap starts and you either check your assignment or they call you, you still have your 2 or 3, if you're in a co-terminal, you have the 3 hours to report for departure or 2 hours in a co-terminal base.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Can I elaborate
Sure.
on that? One of the things, first of all, I believe the question said to report to sign in, and Jeff explained it's to departure. I just want to stress that that's to departure. If it's within that 2 or 3 hours to departure, they should be using a standby. However, once they are out of standbys, they do go back to the call-out list, and they could give you a trip that's going to report in less time. The company knows that they will have to take a delay in a situation like that, but they shouldn't be calling you within that if there are standbys available.
Okay, thanks, Renee. Okay, this next one I might need a little help on. It says LRDs and reserve flight attendants given a reassignment. Explain that. I think that means line holders,
That's
right?
what it means.
Okay. Explain that line holders on a mixed crew, that means line holders and reserves, that the entire crew gets reassigned regardless if one crew member is a line holder.
Right. So,
Okay.
and whenever they're doing reassignments, if they need the whole crew, of course, everybody's going to get reassigned, rescheduled, sorry. And then if they only need one, then yeah, it should be, it depends on where you are in the trip, but if you're in, you've already reported and you've already taken off, then they're going to offer it in seniority order. They should offer it in seniority order contractually. However, everyone is treated equally as far as seniority goes to the most junior person. If nobody else wants it, it's the junior person that's going to go.
For rescheduled.
For reschedule,
Right.
correct.
Because really this contract we have rescheduled, we don't really use reassignment and reschedule. Everything is really a reschedule. And a lot of that is because reschedules are paid the greater of your original or actual. So, okay. Next question. Airport standbys are often assigned 2 days in a row. More junior flight attendants will serve 2 standbys in 2 consecutive days, and more senior flight attendants will not serve 1 the whole month. Why not assign 1 at a time until every reserve that month has served at least 1 before the second round begins? I think that might be enough, Marty. Do you want to explain kind of how standbys work?
Sure. Okay, so standbys are assigned, during ROTA or sometimes during ROTA D. There is a separate standby assignment list too. When you're looking at the reports, make sure you're looking at the standby assignment list. where you fall on that list, because it's not always the same order as for a sequence assignment. But as far as the 2 in a row, a lot of times we get calls on the desk with people saying, oh, I just got called for a third standby and so-and-so hasn't even sat one. Well, maybe it was just the schedule that they had where they didn't need standbys. Maybe they're on a schedule where everybody else that's on the same days as them likes to bid standby, so they just happen to be assigned a standby. The bottom line is, yes, everyone should do 2 before you do a third, as long as those other folks are legal and available, and that's the caveat there. Most of the time when we get calls and they say so-and-so hasn't gotten called for this standby, why am I getting assigned a third? That flight attendant's not legal and available to sit that standby.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. We could probably do a big PowerPoint on that.
An entire
Yeah.
day.
But I think we all understand the concept, and really having the language there, it is if we're all on stand, or if we're all legal and available, and Renee sat 2, and you sat 0, and I sat 2, then you should have it.
Absolutely.
But if you're not part of the mix, then it's between Renee and I who have had 2.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Well, I kind of answered this a little bit, but I'll say it again and let someone else answer it. But what exactly is the APFA doing to try and lower reserve numbers? And also, when will Dallas specifically get trips improved?
Okay, so I'll speak to the APFA. What we are doing, as Julie mentioned, we're doing a lot of data collection. I mean, Renee, Jeff, and I sit daily and do crunch numbers, look at numbers. What happened over the weekend that we had so many reassignments? I counted up systems trips in every single base. How many systems trips are being built in every single base over the weekends or anytime there's weather? We have tried so hard to get data from the company, and it's like banging our heads against a brick wall sometimes, most of the time. So we've had to figure out ways we're going to get the data ourselves. And sometimes it's very time consuming because we don't have the tools the company has, but we're figuring out other ways around that, and we're getting some tools and collecting more and more data so that we can fight to show that these trips are being built in ways that they're going to fall apart, creating the need for more reserves. The sit times are not helping at all with not using reserves. We're still seeing reserves used at an incredibly ridiculous rate.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
Because what we're seeing are these long duty days.
Absolutely.
Right? And the long duty days, if your trip is already built to 12.5 hours, right?
Right.
Then if there's a delay because of, we've got long sit times also, right? And you cannot finish out the rest of your day, then somebody else, some other reserve in another, is going to have to take the rest of your trip or part of your trip. So I think the long duty days is definitely a part of the problem that we're seeing also.
Yep.
So sit times, creating longer duty days, it definitely is something also the base presidents are working on a regular basis. This is not, this is really a issue system-wide. I don't think this is an issue at just certain bases. It's system-wide that we're having this problem. As far as trip improvement, right?
Right.
I mean, the same thing.
Yeah.
Every month, your base presidents, your national are on allocations calls, and we saw last year when trips were not built with long duty days and long sit times, we didn't have all these rescheduling problems.
Correct.
We didn't have reserve problems either at that point,
Right.
right?
Right.
And now,
Right.
and I believe we said this, but go ahead.
Yes, we have mentioned that many times to the company. And one other thing is if you are seeing trips that you're flying, and it is an inhumane trip, send it to us. We have to have your input as well. This is a team effort. I mean, we can sit and crunch numbers all day long, but if we're not hearing from you about, I had a trip that fell apart, I had a trip that, was just literally exhausting, I need to know so we can go look at that trip and look for other trips just like it. and take that back to the company.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Okay. This next question, and this is actually the first time I've seen something like this. Why hasn't the union initiated the grandfather clause for Phoenix base not having to be part of a rotating reserve? Do you want?
Sure. So there isn't any grandfather clause in the JCBA about rotating reserve. You know, when Phoenix was downsized, there wasn't any clause in there that would have allowed for that to happen. And you know, we certainly understand the plight of Phoenix, believe me. We talk about it all the time, about how ridiculously senior reserve is gone. The high number of reserves is adding to that. And, you know, that is one of the side effects of rotating reserve, is that it is going to capture, if you have a 25% reserve factor, everyone in the base is going to wind up rotating. It's not any different than what we saw happen in Raleigh when it was such a senior base. And, you know, you can't just designate the bottom people to be permanent reserves. If that happened, you would have everybody transferring out of the base, and it just would keep going higher and higher. So that is something that I know the negotiating team is going to have to look very hard at, to see what we can do with rotating reserve and make it a little bit easier to take.
Thanks, Marty.
That's senior.
Okay, it looks like the next two questions kind of are along the same lines. And I know this is really more about negotiations than it is about this subject today, because one of the questions here is could we please evaluate A days for a reserve system? The other one is asking about bringing availability back. So this is all negotiations. I mean, the contract we have currently is what we're living under. And I can tell you that the negotiations team will be spending a lot of time on reserve, and we are well aware that, and I can tell you just from being on the previous negotiating team, that never ever was reserve ever this high, even with a different rotation system. It never went to this seniority, it never hit everyone in the base. So this is definitely a combination of a few factors, but we understand this is a problem and it is not acceptable, to say the least. So I want you to know that we definitely will be working on this and we'll be looking for a solution to this. I'm going to move past a couple of those, you guys, because I think that really belongs in negotiations. Let's keep answering questions. Why are we not allowed to pick a position on a trip when they call to assign and all positions are still available? And I think, Renee, you're going to answer this.
Yeah, positions are assigned by ROTA. Once upon a time, you see that the trip, or ROTA D, you see that a trip is open and the scheduler's calling you, but ROTA or ROTA D has already made the assignments, and those assignments include the position number. ROTA assigns in seniority order, and it's going to assign in order 1, 2, 3, 4. ROTA D assigns in inverse seniority order, and it's going to assign positions 4, 3, 2, 1. So when crew scheduling is calling you, your position has already been designated for you. We do have the seat swap app available, so if once you guys are on board the aircraft, you decide you want separate positions, you can always utilize that app to trade positions to more preferable ones.
Okay, thanks, Renee. All right, it looks like we have newly displaced flight attendants. We know that we have them throughout the system. To Dallas from Phoenix. Coming off leave after 10 months, commuting first time in career, asking for high-level advice or encouragement for surviving this aspect. I'm assuming this is not only for reserve, but for everything.
Yeah.
But I would say on reserve, the best advice we could give everyone is to do as much research as possible through the tools that we showed you at the start.
Right.
Use those tools. You also have APFA reps here who will answer questions for you regarding it, anything that you need. Also your base presidents, your vice presidents. APFA is here to help you in any way we can. I know as far as Dallas is concerned, we have a lot of flight attendants who are displaced to Dallas. We'll talk to the Dallas-based reps and talk to them and see if there's somewhere on their page or somewhere that they can refer them to.
And the Dallas Union page is fantastic on Facebook. So all you have to do is reach out to somebody and ask them if they can add you to the page, or find the page and send a request in, because Amber does a great job keeping up with it.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going here and get as many of these in as we possibly can. When our reserve trip is delayed before we leave our homes, what are our options with regard to sign-in? What is crew schedule's obligation if we call to adjust our sign-in? What is crew schedule obligation if the delay is known hours before sign-in? Jeff, you want to help us with that?
Well, contractually, crew schedule is to advise you of a delay as soon as practicable after they become aware of the delay. So it's really up to them to notify you. But if you've already left your home, for example, your original sign-in time and your duty day starts, and which can be to your advantage on some level.
Yeah.
Once your duty day starts and they're trying to, there's a rolling delay or otherwise, that's going to be to your advantage to be signed in on the earlier side. I'm not sure exactly if Marty or Renee want to chime in and help me on that one, because that one's...
Do you want to just explain that a little bit more, though? So if you're home and you pick up the phone and now you've been delayed 3 hours,
right.
Now you have a new report time,
right.
Which is 3 hours later. If you're already on the road and you get to the airport and you didn't get that call, then your duty day started at your original duty day.
Right.
Okay.
And we have seen where they have adjusted your sign-in too, and you're not able to sign in. That's when you need to call and say, hey, I didn't get that notification. And like, for instance, I leave 3 hours before I go to Charlotte. And so I leave most times way before they've even thought about calling me. So I want my sign-in to be my sign-in time, because I've already hit the road. So if you have any trouble, let us know. They should adjust it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Let's see here. We're going to find a few more. Okay. So we have a couple suggestions here. I don't know if we want to comment on them. When trips that notoriously end up in open time day after day, why does the company put those in red flag days ahead, rather than them changing hands so many times from one reserve to another? Does anybody want to comment on that? It looks like these are just suggestions for us.
Yeah, I think that when trips open up, crew scheduling, actually their procedures are first to run it through UBL without the red flag indicator, and then they run it through with the red flag indicator. Crew scheduling is looking at the number of open trips that they have in a base, the number of reserves that they have available. It's not just cut and dry, nobody likes this trip, so we'll put a red flag on it.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay, we're going to go down here to, I understand we can pick up trips in ETB on our Golden and Flex days. What is the earliest we can pick up on the first day off, and the latest the trip has to end on the last day off? Also, is there a difference between having the ETB trips added on top of our guarantee or added with your guarantee? I'll stop there because there's one more question, and it looks like, Jeff, you're going to answer those for us.
Yes. So if you're trying to pick up a trip, so following a reserve duty period, you can pick up a trip that reports after 10, but you must arrive by 6 p.m. or 1800 on your last day off. However, you do have the option of calling crew schedule the day before your day off if you wanted to pick up something before 10. Once you arrive from your trip or your wrap ends, you can call and ask crew schedule to put in a release for your last assignment or wrap, and then you could pick up something earlier in the day.
Okay.
As far as whether the difference between having the trip added on top of your guarantee, if you're picking up on a day off on ETB, it's going to be on top of your guarantee.
I think maybe what they're talking about, because it looks like this is the last part of the question.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring hours into your reserve month, right, you have an option. Do you want to talk about that?
You do. It's an option in PBS when you're bidding for your reserve your reserve schedule, you can bid to waive carryover credit. So if you want the hours to count towards your reserve guarantee, Josh is going to show us on the reserve.
We're going to go to the reserve tab.
Yeah. And it's the one waiver that we have available for reserve PBS bidding.
Okay, so we're going to go to the reserve tab, right?
And then I actually had a carry-in trip. You can see that I had that on, from.
So you chose to add the waiver.
I chose to add the waiver so I could get paid that those hours on top of my guarantee. However, if I was looking to work less days and have it included in my, towards calling out of time to getting done sooner, I could have had it included in my 75-hour guarantee. So I just wouldn't touch the waiver if I wanted to include.
You brought 10 hours in and you didn't include the waiver, then you would start off the month with 10 hours.
Yeah, correct.
Towards your guarantee.
Towards my guarantee, yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay. When sitting standby, how can you tell which open trips are available? Why does scheduling wait to fill trips that have been sitting in open time for extended periods of time?
So, sometimes if it's a weather delay or something, or if there's weather, we do notice that trips sit. They do try to fill trips as quickly as possible, but remember, they're human beings too, and that's their job to run the UBL. And so there's no set schedule for UBL. It's as trips fall open, then they will run the UBL. Anytime you're sitting standby, a trip that has less than 2 hours to departure, though, is going to go to a standby. So if you're watching that open time and you're watching to see what they're doing, and just note, they are running it through UBL, probably more than one time if they can, and they have time for it. But if it goes to under 2 hours, it's going to go to a standby. If it's 2 hours and 1 minute, and they've already run it through UBL and there were no takers, and there are reserves at home, they're going to call a reserve from home for that trip.
So every trip outside of the call-out time, the 2 or 3 hours, always has to run through the UBL first. That's the contract. Always has to go through UBL, see if there's any takers, and then it will go to Rota D.
Right.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. I think we've got one more question here. On time for one more. Okay, I see. Will a recording of this town hall be available on the website at a later time? Yes, it will. That looks like someone who wasn't on the call. So, well, of course, all town halls that we do, we put on the website so that you can come back to it. Do you want to pick out if there's a question on here that you think we haven't touched upon yet? Okay, you already touched upon, I have one about the flex month. We already talked about that. Yeah, let's see here.
The one question I see about why is it so difficult to see where we stand when we're on reserve, and I know everybody at this table will attest to the fact that I complain daily about the standby call-out list, and that is something that, like Renee mentioned earlier, there are several things that are scheduled for future enhancements, and that's something that's very near and dear to all of us, that it makes our lives easier when we're on reserve to see the reports function in the best way possible for the folks that are sitting on reserve. So that is something we continue to work on too.
Yeah, can I just add to that? We have brought this to the company, this list of enhancements for reserve. For those of you who used to be with LUS, you knew of the Cat Creek Screen 18, which showed you everything. On the LAA side, there wasn't that much transparency, but because the LUS side had this, it has been something that has been very near and dear to our hearts. We have been pushing and pushing for these enhancements to be put through. Unfortunately, they put us off because they had contract provisions that had to go through first, such as 12Q, transitioning from line holder to reserve or vice versa, and the less than minimum call-out waiver for aggressive reserves. These things are now completed. The reserve section is now completed, and we plan on hitting them hard trying to get these enhancements implemented.
Yeah, right. Last year, it's been a little difficult to get some of this done due to COVID, but it's time they get back to working on these.
Right.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions. One of them is do we have rest between wraps now? And if yes, how long is the rest? Renee, I'll let you take that one.
No, there is no rest between wraps. There is what while we were talking about this in the implementation of it, we were calling a wrap gap. 12J, 12C provides for 11 hours between wraps when the allocations per wraps allow. And that's the key. The wrap distribution numbers determine how many people can have those 11 hours between wraps. So yes, they're going to try to give you 11 hours between wraps, but if that's not possible because they need more people in Reserve A than they need in Reserve D, you may not be able to get it.
Okay, and so also part of that is when you're on a wrap, you're not considered on duty. So that's where I think rest is, you get rest when you're on duty,
Right.
and when you're on a wrap, it's not classified or considered duty. So, but I know, there's been a lot that we've worked on that, but there has been programming done so that when it can be, when you can schedule some with the 11 hours off, they do now, and that's done by seniority.
Right.
Right.
And if you look at the wrap details page on the Rota results, you will see it now shows you who's legal for what wraps and who's not legal for what wraps. And some of those legalities actually include the 11 hours between wraps.
Great. Thank you, Renee. Okay, and I know we have Larry here, and we have an issue that we would like, or a part of reserves that we would like you to address, Larry, and that is if you're sitting reserve out of space.
So we have a lot of new people on reserve. We have displaced flight attendants as well as commuters that are serving reserve. So we just want to remind everyone that the contractual, language that when you're serving a wrap, that depending on where you're based, that you have to be available to report to the assignment within 2 hours or 3 hours of, when you make that contact with scheduling. That's really important because I will just say that the Vice President's Department, specifically our SBA department, has had issues recently where we had multiple flight attendants that were not able to make their assignments during a wrap, and through company investigations determined that the flight attendant was not in base. So the key here is that you have to be able to make your assignment within the 2-3 hours. That's key. Just remember that. However you're going to do that, that's the key. You have to be able to make that 2 or 3 hours. And we really don't want anyone to be in a situation where, they're for some reason unable to make it, and there could be subsequent problems following that. So just a reminder to everyone that if you're serving a wrap, just be sure that you can make it within the 2 or the 3 hours, however that happens.
Okay, thanks, Larry. We are about out of time, and I know we have a few more questions here. I do see a lot of these questions. I will say I will be forwarding on, and the negotiators and I will be looking at all of them. Great questions, a lot of comments also about the reserve system today, and we appreciate that. We're here to listen to you. We want to hear everything that you have to say about the current reserve system, and I want you to know that we are definitely aware that the system, as far as the rotation, is not working. None of us in this room would agree that 30-year, 40-year flight attendants should ever be on reserve. So it is a priority, to say the least, for us. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you found this beneficial. We will look at having more of these in the future. I'm sorry this didn't happen sooner, but I'm glad we started it today. We've had quite a few town halls this last year for many of the COVID-related issues that we had recalls met, and really we realize reserve is one that we need to continuously work on and to help our flight attendants to understand the system as best as we possibly can. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, all of you, for all your answers to the questions. And until we see you again, fly safe.
Thank you.
Thanks.